Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I am just delighted to be here, and I thank you very much for joining me. Sometimes when I'm doing an interview, I'll come across an individual who is so deeply inspiring because his work is, or her work is, really dedicated to making this world a better place. And today, I'm just so honored to have such an individual as one of my guests, Mr. Peter Samuelson. How are you, Peter?
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, just delighted to have you. I want to fill my viewers in and my listeners in on who you are, and then just to dive into what I'm certain will be a very hearty conversation. Peter Samuelson is a proud Jewish man. He's a producer, he's an educator, he's an entrepreneur, he's a media executive, and he is a philanthropic person. He's been called a serial pro-social entrepreneur, and he is an author. Over the years, he has created 25 films, including Tom and Viv, Revenge of the Nerds, and High Velocity. He's the founder of 6 charities, on his 7th right now. One with Steven Spielberg, the Starlight Children's Foundation. And shortly, as I said, he is an author, and he will be releasing a book, which is called Finding Happy, A User's Guide to Your Life with Lessons from Mine. Peter Samuelson personifies Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, and he is here to talk about it because he loves to do it, and which is what I love talking about as well. It is said about Peter, he is a highly accomplished producer, philanthropist, and master storyteller who learned how to scale walls rather than being stopped by them. He's the father of 4, he's a grandfather, and he's a husband, and I'm just delighted that you're here today. Thank you, Peter, for joining us.
A pleasure.
I meet a lot of people, and I've been interviewing for years, and there's so many different individuals out there who are deeply accomplished, and they've done such great things for themselves, for their family, for their community, for the world. But there are times I feel when I have the privilege of meeting somebody who is a step above, somebody who lives and breathes, whose DNA is what we call in Jewish Tikkun Olam, which is repairing the world. And the reason that touches me so greatly is because, as I mentioned to you before, my father was a rabbi. God bless his soul. And he was the type of rabbi who was a roll-up-your-sleeves fellow, who was there to help Jews and non-Jews alike. And again, he lived and breathed the ability to help. And to the extent that, just to make my point, to be a bit dramatic about it, I remember when people in our community, I'm come from Kitchener, Ontario, it's about an hour from Toronto, would pass away. And my father would come to life. He would feel as though I now have the ability to help someone. I helped them in their life, and now I can help them in their death. My point is that you are one of those people. And I'm very excited, therefore, to bring who you are to my listeners and to my viewers, because I think we can learn so much from you. So, as they say, Yesher Koach, well done on your life so far.
Well, thank you. Back at you. I'm sitting here reading the titles of the books on your shelf behind you.
Yes.
A number of them very interesting to me. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I wrote the book because I realized that in my mentoring work, and I've mentored hundreds and hundreds of young adults through various of the nonprofits, mostly First Star, where we house, educate, and encourage foster kids with the goal of getting them into college out of high school. And we do, 89% of them. But I realized I had kind of pattern recognition in the kinds of questions that they asked in the mentoring. And I realized I could actually make a list of topics that are challenging. How do I find someone to love? Should I go to college? Where should I go? I'm being bullied. What do I do about it?
Yeah.
What is a good risk? What is a bad risk? How can you tell the difference? And on and on and on. So I started getting up. I think you have to have a bit of self-discipline. And I'm blessed by the fact that I don't sleep that much, don't seem to need to. So I started getting up every morning, 5 days a week, at 5 a.m. And I started by writing 2 books on alternate days. One was the kind of what I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18, mentoring book, divided into chapters by topic. And the other one, a kind of adventures in the screen trade, just kind of funny or scary or absurd anecdotes of, potty actors that I've worked with, and, mad circumstances, and when I nearly died, and when I did take a risk that I shouldn't have, or I didn't take a risk that I should have. And then I realized a few months into the writing, I could actually combine these, because I can use, what happened to me with Steve McQueen, or what happened to me with Peter Sellers, or what happened to me on the Pink Panther film. I can use those little stories, some of which are just so absurd. I mean, I know they're riveting because I talk to the kids about them, and I know that they find them gripping. I could use them to illustrate my chapters in the self-help book. And so I did. So I finished this thing and I called it Finding Happy. And I thought I'd have to self-publish it. And I was going to do that. Yes. And then somebody introduced me to a book agent, rather good one, Folio Literary, and the guy's name is Jeff Silberman. And the next thing I know, he's got a little bidding war going on. And Simon & Schuster Regalo imprint ended up taking the book. And here we are, June 10, it'll be out on everything you can imagine, both in bookstores, Barnes and Noble and so forth, but also, more general stores. The latest one, which my son finds just hilarious, is it's going into Target. They are have a display of Finding Happy. And he said to me, where do you think they'll put the display? And I have no idea. He said, I think it should go between the condoms and the plastic spoons. And I said, I think that is in fact its natural place in the universe is exactly there. So it'll be on Amazon and all the other online stuff. I just finished recording the audiobook, a strange experience where you sit in a booth with a big old microphone just like yours, and a man sits in the next room, and every so often Paul, the engineer, says, would you mind starting that paragraph again? Yeah. And I did that for 4 days, 6 hours a day, and got it done. So all good. I feel as though it's a milestone. It's also been incredibly good for me because it has helped me, one memory leads to another memory leads. Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah. And so I've been able to kind of reconstruct stuff lost in the mists of time and to reclaim it. And I hope it's useful. I mean, I'm not going to stop mentoring and just give them a book, but I think it's a book. Interestingly, the publisher thinks the buyership is different to the readership. The readership is young adults, 15 to 30 years old, whether they're underprivileged or not, and in any young adult. But the buyership may well be older adults who buy it because they care about a young adult, whether it's their child or their niece or nephew or grandchild or their student. And hopefully it will be very helpful. I actually, with another donor, we bought 500 copies, which have now been delivered to the 12 first star academies across the country. So I'm starting to get feedback from the students, and they eat it up, and they ask good questions, and they seem moved by parts of it, and they felt seen.
Yes.
So it's good. And I'm looking forward to the summer, because I'm going all over the place doing the book tour and signings and appearing in universities and colleges and so forth. It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life that I've got at the moment.
Oh, look at you. It is a wonderful life. And I have to tell you something. I read much of it, not the entire book, but I read a lot of it. And I think that it's magnificent. I'm going to order it for myself. I'm going to order it for my son. And I think it's going to be one of those books I give out as a gift. Because it's so all encompassing. You really bring so much of your life to the book. It's over 300 pages, and you're incredibly honest about who you are. You know, there were times where you talk about the importance of humility and so on. And you said when you were younger, I had sort of this arrogance about me. I thought, good for you, man. Good for you about talking about the evolution of yourself, your essence, who you really are, because that's the way you're going to grip both adults and children.
Well, first of all, I love every so often when I'm meeting with a Canadian friend, I wait for it because they say about rather than about. And you just did it. And I tip my hat to all my many Canadian friends. I've spent big swathes of my life in Toronto and Montreal, and I've made a film in two films in Vancouver. So I love Canada. And it's a wonderful, wonderful country. I think I have generated a great deal of happiness for myself through helping other people. And there are 3 chapters in the book, one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. Meaning of Life Part 1, Meaning of Life Part 2, and Meaning of Life Part 3. And in the end, just to take the thunder away from the book, I think Maimonides had it right that by helping other people, we find our own happiness. It was a shock to me as a Jew, because I think, I've been most of my life an average Jew, much more a sort of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur kind of a Jew rather than an every Shabbat Jew. Sorry about that. I was off doing something.
You're busy.
A poor excuse. But my mother-in-law said to me, what you talk about when we have our bi-weekly breakfast. She's a psychologist, and I have the privilege of free therapy from her every 2 weeks with scrambled eggs. Nothing the matter with that. And she said, you talk a lot about things that Maimonides thought about and wrote down, and you should go read it. And I did. And I was really shocked. So Maimonides was a Spanish rabbi, but he lived in Alexandria in Egypt. And it was a wonderful time to be a great rabbi, because he palled around with the local Muslim imam, and he palled around with the local high priest, the Christian, and they had lunch together and they quoted each other. And it was a time of great sort of ecumenical kumbaya between the 3 Abrahamic religions, at least in Alexandria. And he wrote about this thing called the neshama. And I, when my grandparents were alive, I used to hear them say, oh, he has such a neshama. He has the neshama. And I knew it was good, but I had no idea what it meant. So turns out, per Maimonides, that it's the top layer of your soul, and not everyone has it. But it is the membership society of people who really do feel possessed to try to make the world around them a better place. And he says the most remarkable stuff. When 2 people who have never met meet for the first time and they have the neshama, they feel as though they've known each other 1,000 years. And they say, Hineni, here I am. What shall we do? And I thought, oh, be damned. Yes, it's every 100th person, or is it every 80th? But I have no idea. But every so often I meet someone where to call it simpatico or an alignment of intent doesn't do it justice. It's some kind of spiritual affinity for other people who want to help do something decent, honorable, leveraged, useful. And I mean, you know, my 7 nonprofits, I couldn't have done any of them without, at this point, it's thousands of other volunteers. So, you know, what do film producers do? They call a meeting, and each of the 7 started with me calling a meeting and standing at the end of a table and saying, "This is my thought. What do you think?" Yes. And then everyone saying, "Yes, Hineni, here I am."
I love the story you tell about meeting with an HBO producer, and he turned down your idea for a film, and you say that's what happens normally. And he said, "What else is going on in your life?" And you told him about a startup charity that you were about to put together, and he started to cry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I now realize that human resources, when you are hiring people, regardless of if it's in my film company or if it's in one of the 7 charities, it's an art more than it's a science. It's very difficult to know whether you're hiring the right person. You don't really know if you got it right until they've been with you months.
Correct.
By which time it's too late to easily make a change. So what I've learned as a trick, certainly in the charities, is unless they have an emotional affinity, unless they tear up, unless they really put their hand on their heart and have a passion to help, whether it's in Starlight, seriously ill children, or in First Star, kids in foster care, or edar.org, where we house unhoused people in single-user, inexpensive homeless shelters on wheels. If you don't just feel it, and I feel it myself all the time, I think the neshama owns your heart. And I can feel it inside me when something makes me well up. And can I tell you one story?
Yeah, but just tell me one thing before we go into the story. There were a number of times in your book where you talked about going off on your own for a few minutes after something very emotional would happen. As an example, this young woman supposed to be singing on a stage, a foster child, and she froze, and her whole group of friends from the foster home came up, surrounded her, and supported her. And she ultimately sang. And you wrote after that, and then I had to go off and walk on my own. And I was thinking, is that when you tear up? Because you're an Englishman. You're not supposed to.
Oh,
right?
yeah. We don't. We're not big on public displays of massive crying. So, yeah, I go for a walk. And so in First Star, I really am only qualified to teach 2 subjects. I teach videography because I ought to know how to do that. I've made 27 films. But I also invented a class called Random Acts of Kindness and Pay It Forward. So in the first class, and I'm teaching it usually to 10th graders, so they're like 15, I say, okay, let me ask you a question. You're walking down the sidewalk, and there is an old lady fast asleep, wearing rags, face down on the sidewalk. 3 choices. Do you A, put $1 under her arm, or B, wake her up and give her the $1, or do you look the other way and walk straight on past? Don't give her anything. And that leads to a conversation about the golden rule. It's in 170 world religions, and it says that the human heart seeks social justice. And that when we see something that is unfair, out of kilter, cruel, most of us, I think there are some true evil people who never feel this and don't seem to have a problem with it, terrible narcissists who don't have any empathy. But mostly, most of us, I think, our heart can be moved. And we talk about, why does the one who doesn't wake the person up? And I end up talking about Maimonides and, the pyramid of the values of giving, where at the top, you don't give a man fish, you teach him to fish, but also you don't seek signage. You don't have your name put on the wall of the shul. You do it because it needs to be done. I mean, every end of year, thousands of donations come into my charities in multiples of 18. That is the secret sign, because 18 obviously is the letters Chai that make the word life.
Yes.
And if it's 108, I don't think anybody gives us 18, but if it's 180 or 1800 or 18,000, or occasionally a bit more than that, if it's multiples of 18, I know those are the anonymous Jews. And I end up writing thank you letters to law firms for them to pass on to people whose identity I will never know. So that's at the top of your pyramid. So yes, I sometimes things happen to me and I have to go for a little walk to regain my composure. I'm supposed to be the leader, so yeah. I'm supposed to have my my act together. I give you another one. So this class, Random Acts of Kindness, in the second class, I say to the class, something amazing is going to happen to you, each of you. There's a wonderful man, a donor, who lives in Dallas called Mort. Yes. And because of Mort's generosity, each of you is going to receive $200. And they sit there incredulous. We're going to get $200. And I say, well, you can't keep it. You have to give it away. You have to each write an essay to whom or to what you wish $200 to go. And then we're actually going to do it. And then you have to go out 2 weeks later and see, was it any good? Did the homeless guy buy the shoes he needed, or did he buy a big bottle of brandy? And we actually do it. Beautiful. So, I mean, the essays from 15-year-olds are remarkable. Here's one. My name is Jose. I am adding $10 of my own, because that makes 210, which is 3 times 70. And $70 is how much it takes down at the Humane Society for them not to euthanize a dog. And I'm going to save 3 puppies. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the last time I was down there, I looked into the eyes of a puppy that had been very badly beaten. And I saw my own eyes, because I was very badly beaten as well. Love, Jose. That's another one that would send me off for a walk. And
Peter, you know what was another good story was the young man. He said, my mom did some awful things and she's in jail and she doesn't like the shampoo, so I'm sending her money.
Yeah, yes, she did bad things. They always know when they have a relative in prison. They can always tell you. They don't just say she's got another 2 years to go. They say she has 2 years, 3 months, and 7 days to go until she gets out. Yeah. And not all of the parents, this is a new thing because of fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis. The neglect of kids in foster care has this new component, which is that the parents are not evil. They are simply, addle-brained because of the drug and addicted. And, it leads to terrible things. We also, for 4 years in one of our academies, we had a young man that I had great affection for, Michael, whose mother, while giving birth to him 15 years earlier, had gone into a coma from which she had never emerged. Yes. And there she was in a hospital bed, and he visited her every couple of weeks. So she didn't do anything wrong. She just had the world's worst luck, and so did he. But it's amazing. It's this class, the amusement of it is all the kids, they're shocked that they're given the agency, the control of doing some good. They're also, I think, a bit surprised that there are other people worse off than them. There always are. And I feel as though they're all a foot taller as a result of an act of generosity. And it has a real effect. We stood last Christmas, Hanukkah, the end of the year, a restaurant in Los Angeles, a donor donated this posh restaurant, and we took 60 of our students and about 20 alumni and staff and volunteers and donors and whatnot. Must have been over 100 of us there, and we had a real fine lunch. And then we come out and we're standing on the sidewalk and we're waiting, which is always the minor theme of First Star, is that the vans are always late.
The van doesn't show up, right? Yeah.
They're lost, and they take the kids to the wrong place.
I've been there. Yeah, I understand that.
Drives me crazy. So we're standing there on the sidewalk with all the kids, and the head waiter comes out and he says, "What do you want me to do with the desserts? Because no one ate the desserts." And I said, "I don't remember. What are the desserts?" "Oh, it's these little cupcakes with icing on top."
Muffins.
And I have like 100 muffins left. And I said, "Well, don't throw them away. Can you put them in, little boxes or bags or something, and bring them out on trays, and let's give them to the kids. They can take them back to their placements." So that's exactly what happens. And most of the kids got 2 of them. And they're standing there, and we're standing there. We're waiting for the wretched vans. And I see one of the kids, quite a troubled young man, out of the corner of my eye, I see him walking away from us. And I'm looking, and he goes like at least 100 yards, and he keeps going. And I'm thinking, was he doing a runner? Is he running away? What? And I'm getting ready to send someone to go get him back. We're responsible. And then he stops, and there is, in fact, a person lying on the ground, an unhoused homeless person, and who is asleep. And it's fantastic because he bends over and puts the muffin in its little box thing in the crook of the arm of this person, and then he sidles back to us.
Yes.
And blends in, does not want to be noticed, doesn't
say a word.
And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is, wow, he was actually listening in the class. So I think you don't have to be a foster kid. I think everyone does better by helping other people. And if you're an organizer, well, then you organize. And if you're an engineer, do engineering, do something that but which is for the benefit of other people. Watch how happy, and you have benefit right away. Look, my cousin introduced me all those years ago to a seriously ill little boy in London, terminally ill, and she asked him what would make him happy. And in his hospital bed, he said, "Oh, that's easy. I want to go to Disneyland." And I remember her phoning me and saying, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, he has to go to Disneyland." So he and his mum, we flew them to LA. The cousin and the mum and the son moved into my apartment. It was back when I was single. And we did 2 weeks of everything you're not supposed to do with a dreadfully ill little boy.
Yes.
And he had a fine time. His mum built memories for later of her son being happy in the last part of his life. And after he died, it was very peculiar because it was very sad, but also one had these memories of happy times that we had had. And what do producers do? We call meetings. I stood at the end of a table after work, and I had cast the meeting. I thought, what do I need if I'm going to start a charity? No clue, but you're sure to need a lawyer, an accountant, a publicist. an organizer, someone who understands hospitals and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so I had convened this meeting and I said, look, this is what we just did. Maybe we could do it again. And everyone said, yeah, why don't we do that? We could do half a dozen kids, make them happy each year. And we said, oh, that would be huge. And a little bit of money was donated. And the lawyer said, okay, I'll incorporate it. I'll get the 501c3, the nonprofit, charity commission, all of that. And he said, what do you want to call it? And I hadn't given it any thought. And I had invited a very pretty young lady with whom I had had precisely one date. And I'd phoned her up and said, didn't you tell me that you were an accountant? She said, I am an accountant. Why have you not phoned me? And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. My bad. I've been out of town and terrible. But will you come to this meeting? Because I need an accountant. So it was she, when the lawyer said, what do you want to call it? She said, you know that children's rhyme, Starlight, Star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might have this wish. I wish tonight.
Yeah.
She said, why don't we call it the Starlight Children's Foundation? And we all said, yeah, that sounds really good. It's optimistic and happy. And yeah, we're the silver lining in a cloud of the child's illness and disarray in their family. And we'll try and make them happy. And the graphic designer that I had invited said, I even see it in my mind's eye. It's a child reaching for a star. And we all said, yeah, that sounds good. And that, for 41 years now, that's been the logo. And just to cut to the chase, Starlight, all these years later, we added up all the forms in Australia, Canada, United States, UK, all the annual tax filing nonprofit forms. We've raised and spent well over $1 billion.
Yeah.
So it's the work of thousands of people. But the point is, what has been my personal benefit, other than a whole lot of joy it's brought me making these kids happy? I'll tell you, that young lady, the accountant, that was our second date. And then we had a third and a fifth and a 10th date. And then we did a Christmas Hanukkah party at County USC Medical Center for kids in the children's ward. And there we had a live band and there was dancing. And we had one little girl who was so ill she couldn't get out of bed. And she danced horizontal. They wheeled the whole bed in and she danced in bed. And we had adult size animal costumes, which had been donated by SeaWorld. And my girlfriend was inside the dolphin, and you could see her face through a little grill in its chest. And I looked in, and all her mascara had run down her cheeks because she was crying because she was looking at the little girl dancing in a hospital bed. And that was the moment I thought, oh, I think I love her.
Yes.
And I proposed and we got married, and she's the mother of my children and grandmother of my grandchildren. And so there you go, the greatest of gifts, because I started a charity. I say to young adults, if you want to be happy, go and volunteer to someone else's charity. You don't have to start one yourself. Find one that you care about and go and volunteer. And it is much better than a dating app where you flip to the right or the left. It's all nonsense. You don't know anything about these people. But if someone volunteers next to you in a nonprofit, in a charity, it's the world's best dating service.
Yes.
Because you have something in common. And why would they be there if they were a real so-and-so? You have to exert yourself to volunteer.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. By the way, I love the way you finish each chapter with a synopsis of what you can take out of it. And one of the chapters indeed was that if you want to meet a good woman, if you want to meet a good man, volunteer. And as soon as I read that, Peter, I texted it over to my son.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I say it in mentoring all the time. I mean, one of the great enigmas for most young adults is, how do I find someone to love who loves me.
Yes.
And well, how do you do that? There's no point in just pontificating. One needs to be very pragmatic, and I think there are several really good ways to be helpful, but one of them is definitely go find a charity, pitch up. It's also very good for your career prospects. It's very difficult if you've graduated from high school or college and you're in the workplace and you're entry level. Go volunteer for a charity. Have one good idea. Watch how fast you're a vice president. Charities
Exactly. Yes.
are, and they have so little money. Have a good idea. All of a sudden, you are in charge
Exactly.
of implementing it.
Yes. Right. Because they say, oh, you like that idea? Then you do it.
Yeah.
It actually kind of reminds me of, you were writing about, you were 18 years old and you were working on a set with Steve McQueen, who you write about very, very dramatically and graphically. You really let us know who he was. He was a dangerous sort of fellow in his own way. And you said, well, people will get fired. Like 3/4 of the staff will get fired. Therefore, I just kept on moving up.
Yeah. Well, I had to learn on my feet. How do you make a workplace work for you? I mean, I say in the book and I say in mentoring, always be the first to arrive, always be the last to go home. Ask yourself, am I doing everything here to be as helpful as I possibly can? And basic stuff like when the kids in First Star, when it's lunchtime, in order for them to go into the commissary, they have to leave the lecture room, the classroom, and shake hands. Is it a dry handshake or is it a damp one?
Excellent.
Are they looking in the eye or are they looking at their boots? And if they don't get it right, they have to go back to the end of the line and have another go, because there are things you can absolutely do when you are entry level anywhere. I say in class, tips for making a success in any classroom: always, without exception, raise your hand and ask a question. Why should you do that? Number one, you might learn something extra. Number two, the teacher will adore you. And number three, it will wake you up, get some adrenaline going, because in order to work out what question to ask and to summon up the courage to ask it, you have to focus on the class and on the lesson, and you will find you have vivid memory of what went on in that class because you asked the question. And so that's all good. And then I've tried to put all the other tips in. Don't do your homework on the bus to school on the last possible day. Do it on the day that they give you the homework, and then you won't have to worry about it. Be organized. People who are organized have to work much less hard than those who are in a massive mess, who are constantly panicked and trying to get stuff done at the last minute. If you're organized, if you have a system. And the same thing happens when you go out and you start work. Everyone you meet, it's so brilliant for young adults now, because they all are complete masters of the cloud universe. And, you'll have a spreadsheet, and everyone you meet, you'll get their name and their phone number and their email, and you'll write down the date you met them and who they are. And you'll set Google alarms, or Apple alarms, which will remind you to contact them a week later, a month later, 3 months later, 6, 9, 12 months later, and just tell them, I hope you remember me. I thought you might like to know the latest thing I just was able to do, and so on and so forth. I thought what your talk with me was inspiring, and if you ever see any opportunity there, I would just love to work with you. Oh, by the way, I saw your new film. What an accomplishment, that kind of thing. So that there's a technology. There's also a thing called a spider graph, which I explain in detail in the book, which is a way of taking a multifaceted, intractable thicket of problems where you don't know where to begin, and they're interlocking, and they involve all these different difficult people, and what do you do, and so on and so forth. There's a way that you can do a schematic with you in the middle of it, and by writing it down and seeing it as a kind of map of the challenges, the map of the challenges becomes a map of the solutions. And I tell them, keep it, because you'll look back on it and you'll say, God, I remember how worried I was by that one. And then I just did this, and then I did this, and then I did
Yeah,
that.
you actually said date it. Make sure you put the date on it. And
Yes.
you give a graphic as an example, which I thought was great. Peter, I want to ask you I was thinking about how you've arrived at this place in your life, predicated on what? And I guess I superimposed a little bit of me over you. As I mentioned before, I come from a rabbinical home, and the purpose of that home was to do good, was to be helpful. Now, you had some very, very beautiful people in your life. You talk about, I believe it was Mr. Lund, who was very, very encouraging of you to get into Cambridge, despite the fact that no one in your family had ever gone to college. And then on top of that, or before that actually, was your father, Sidney. And you talk about your dad in such a gracious, elegant way, such a loving way, describing him as a man who would sit on the train and he would express himself to other people there, enter into a conversation. And I remember one to give an example of how much he engaged with others. He comes off the train and he gives you a card of an executive woman he had just spoken to and said, here's your next donation for a given charity that you started. Like, you had these people in your life, Peter. Was that lucky? Was that key to where you're at? What about kids who just have nobody like that?
Well, then they have to find them. And part of the book is you must get one or more mentors. How do you do that? It's very tricky, especially for foster kids. They're moved around an average of 12 or 15 times in their adolescence. The social worker says to them, tomorrow morning 8 a.m. be ready, because I'm coming to take you to a new placement. But why do I have to move to a new placement? Well, because we need this bed for someone else, but we're putting you somewhere else. So here's the trash bag, put your stuff in it, be ready at 8 o'clock. If you've been moved around, we have kids who you ask them, how many placements have you been in? They take out a ratty piece of paper and they've done a list, and it's got like 36 different places that they've stayed. How do you find a mentor if you're moving around like a cardboard box in FedEx, but there are ways that you can find. There's such a thing as remote mentors. And there are organizations that will help you find a mentor. And of course, firststar.org is a way of finding reliable, vetted grown-ups who are there to help you. And also, because First Star works in partnership with 15 great universities, 12 in the United States, 3 in the UK. What is a university? It's older young adults to be role models and mentors and so forth. And it's reliable grown-ups, and it's excellent academics, and it's life skills, and it's community, and it's a t-shirt. And we say to them, this is a 4-year ladder. You're going to be here. You're in now. You're going to be here 4 years, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. And if you fall off the ladder, we'll put you back. Don't worry about it. But you are the only one who can move your feet up the ladder. And then after they graduate from us, and they 89% go on to college, which is pretty damn good compared to the benchmark for American foster kids, which is 6% who go to college. Anyway, the 9 out of 10 who go to college, or the 1 out of 10 who go off to something worthwhile. They join the military, or they become a police officer or a firefighter, or they go into vocational training. I mean, we've got someone now who's a plumber. I said, you may be earning more money than anybody else, because God knows plumbers are expensive, as I well know. What we say is, don't think you can walk away from the top of the ladder. You have to come back, please, and we'll either employ you as a youth coach, for the summer residential session, for example, or for the monthly weekend days, or you can just come back and volunteer and run a class. Pull the younger kids up the ladder behind you. Don't close the trap door through the glass ceiling. You got to pull other kids through it. So it's become a kind of revolving thing. We just had the alumni show. It was just another one of those moments to go have a walk. We give awards for everything. Awards are inexpensive. You get a gift card and a certificate. It's wonderful.
Yes.
And we gave, kids who graduated from high school 100% this month, 100% high school graduation across the 15 academies. Amazing. It's wonderful. But it's always approximately 100%, which is double what it usually is for foster kids. And then the 89% on to college. But we gave awards for our young adults, our alumni who have now got their bachelors. We had several who now had their masters. We've got 2 kids moving on to get their PhD. But also we gave an award to a young man who just bought his first house with his wife.
Wow.
And we gave another award to a kid who must be sleep deprived. He and his lady have just had 2 kids, not easily, through IVF. So, life has victories, and it's very important to celebrate your victories. There's a whole chapter about that in the book. Don't just move on to the next challenge. You have to say, wow, this was a great day. Let me run it through my mind and work out why it was so good. And there was a film with Bruce Willis in it, I don't know, 30 years ago or something, about a family. And they did this thing, which I shamelessly then stole and did ever after at our dinner table as a family. Very simple, highs and lows. Everyone at the table, starting with the youngest. What was your high today? What was your low today? And it's an amazing mechanism of bonding and unconditional love, and also a radar for the parents to work out what's going on with the kids. And it gives great agency, empowerment to children and young adults, and also helps them to realize that they're heard. Unconditional love, I think it's like oxygen. You better have it if you're going to grow and thrive. I had lunch at one of the academies with one of the foster kids, teenager, and I said, "You're always hungry. Why are you always hungry?" He said, "Well, because I'm a growing lad, and because they don't feed me properly in the placement." And I said, "What do you mean they don't feed you properly?" And he said, "Well, I always go to bed hungry." And I said, "Well, why can't you just go to the fridge and get a snack?" And he said, "Well, there's a padlock on it." And I said, "Really? The family that foster you have a padlock on the fridge? Who have keys?" I asked, "to the padlock on the fridge?" And he said, "Well, the family, the father, the mother, their 2 teenage kids, they all have keys. I don't have a key." And there are these slights, these indignities, these blows to self-confidence that are extreme, even though they seem trivial. The padlock would be one, but how about foster kids don't get a suitcase? They get a trash bag. What is the message to your soul if what you're given to schlep your stuff around in is a trash bag? So we, in First Star, we give more suitcases, rollerboards. When they come into the room in a line, in a conga line of, the youth coaches bring in 30 of them, pushing each other along in a long thing, like, when they push carts around in the airport.
Yes.
It's kind of a bit like that. And they are just thrilled. And it's so simple and easy and inexpensive. So, yeah, tikkun olam. I do
You
think
know what? When I was running Via Hafta, the organization that I started, which was predicated on bringing the Jewish community forward and using our gifts, our talents, our successes to help others. And thank God it's still around and it's doing better than ever. I think that the core piece of Via Hafta, working with the homeless, working with the impoverished, working with those on or near the street, was to give them a sense of visibility. And we would do things of a creative nature, like have a creative writing contest for the homeless. We would have art shows. We launched a school for people living on or near the street. And you would sit there, as you were saying, Peter, and you would watch them during the class. And the idea that the teacher was looking at them in the eyes and giving them the respect that they deserve like anybody else, and that we catered the lunches for them. You know what? I thought about that long and hard, and I realized they had never been recognized before. It's like giving them that $200 donation from Mort in Texas, right? And they were astounded by the fact that they were given that agency, as you said. Those were your words. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
I think so. I also think that's an intrinsic pillar of what we can do as Jews at a very tricky time. There isn't a Holocaust going on, thank God. However, anti-Semitism is at a very high point. I mean, it's tripled and it's coming from all directions. You've got your Nazi anti-Semitism, you've got hard left anti-Semitism, and what does one do? And I think what we can do out in the community, the Gentiles think, non-Jews tend to think that Jews are cocky. Jews think they are the chosen people, because it says in the Bible and all of that. They don't understand what being chosen is chosen to do, which is tzedakah and tikkun olam, and put yourself out and try to heal the world. Yeah. And I think we have to show. I'm so proud of my oldest son because he is a mover and shaker in a Jewish charity that's called the Jewish Free Loan Society.
Yeah, it's great.
And they give interest-free loans, not just to Jews, but to anyone who needs, a helping hand. And I just think it's splendid for we, the Jews, to be seen. We're not chosen to get space lasers and all that nonsense, not chosen to control the world. We're a tiny, tiny little minority. Could you please be less mean to us, because we are actually trying to do what we think God wants us to do, which is to try to make civilization better. And in that class that I teach to the foster kids, after we talk about the 170 world religions and the golden rule and so forth, I say, well, what about an atheist? Could an atheist stop and give the old lady, $1? And they say, yeah, you can have empathy as an atheist. And it leads to a conversation about the second law of thermodynamics, the theory of in physics of entropy, which says that in any closed system, what is a closed system? The motor in your automobile, or it could be a family, or it could be a planet. Any closed system, if you don't apply energy, if you just leave it alone to its own devices, it will end up in random chaos and nothingness. If you don't do your tikkun olam, you'll have nothing. If you don't oil your motor, it will eventually stop turning around. If you don't nurture your family, you won't have a family. If you don't do something to heal the planet, you will have waves of migration which no height of wall will ever stop, because in the history, 150,000 years of humanity, all the great migrations have been because people could not feed their families or survive or exist in one place. So they walked up the road and went to a different place. And we need to realize, whether it's because you have spiritual values or you think God told you, or man is never stands so tall as when he stoops to hold the hand of a child in need. We need to do our bit. Better to light a single candle than curse the gathering darkness. God help me, my latest nonprofit effort.
Yes, I was going to ask. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so People for Peace, which is very simple. People, number 4, peace.net. Peopleforpeace.net. What we do, I realize that there are some tremendously evil people who hate Jewish people and who hate Israel, but there is a vastly larger number of young adults in North America and Australia and New Zealand and the UK who are credulous. They are lacking in research and inquiry. So, to use a metaphor or an analogy, we'll never turn the minds of those who organized the green and black tents a year ago on college campuses to protest against the Jews and against Israel as their homeland. But the larger number are those who went and sat in the tents, not because they'd really thought it through, and not really even because they had hatred in their hearts, but because it was cool, and because it was something to do, and because you got to shout and sing songs and stand up for the underdog without really thinking through, actually, who is responsible for the death of innocents? Is it perhaps the soldiers who hide behind them and who take hostages and who build bunkers under hospitals and schools and so on and so forth? And the sheer savagery of October 8, people think it's not true. And I think this is a huge curse that we better do something to turn away, because this is the next generation of adults around us, and it is whom our Jewish young adults are going to grow up and be adults surrounded by. So what I did is I said, well, I don't know how you persuade young people to change their mind about a stupidity. How do you persuade an organization? I'm seriously, I just could palm smack my head. Gays for Hamas. Do you think maybe they haven't thought it through? Do they understand what happens to LGBTQ young adults in the West Bank, in Iran, in among the Houthis, among Hezbollah, in Gaza? They kill them. They hang them off a construction crane. They push them off roofs. They burn them to death. So what I did is I found 2 eminent psychologists whose life work at Emory University, their life work is the science of the persuasion of young adults. How do you do it? Turns out it's complex, it's not straightforward, and some of it is counterintuitive. And we raised some money, and I put together, easy for me to do, I'm a film producer, director, actor, writer, editor, and influencers. And in that brains trust, we produce for the haters, or those who think they hate, we produce 45 or 60-second videos for where the haters live. We go to them through the hashtags TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, and I think we're making a difference, but again, whether we do or don't make a difference, better to light a single candle than curse the gathering darkness. So it's peopleforpeace.net. Anyone who would like to help us, who feels that, I have young relatives on college campuses who can't wear their chai or a Star of David or a yarmulke because they'll get punched in the nose. Well, what nonsense is that? This is our country too. But we have to do pragmatic things. And you can't just shout at the people. You can't just shout back. You actually have to persuade. And it turns out there's an actual persuasion technique where you have to give a premise which your audience will agree with. Can we agree that the death of civilians is a tragedy? And yeah, they do agree with that. And then you say, okay, let's talk about Kibbutz Be'eri on October 8, 2023. And you show video of that. We had huge rows with the IDF and the Israeli government. We said, you have to give us the atrocity video. And they said, no, we're not giving it to you. It's a shanda. We can only show it in embassies. And we said, no. We're filmmakers. We can pixelate. We can do staccato cutting. We can blur. We can have black rectangles. But we have to use some of it. We do not have to show the garden hoe cutting off the head of the farmer as he lies on the ground. But we can see the hoe in the air, and we can see it begin to move, and we can cut away from it and hear the noise. And that will have an effect. We can use the body cam footage of the terrorist Hamas young man who's on a cell phone to his father, actually. And he says, Dad, I'm on the cell phone of this Jewish woman I just killed in one of the farms, and I've killed 8 of them today. And the father says, oh, my son, come home safely. We will celebrate your great victories tonight. That has an impact. And interestingly, one of the ones with the biggest impact is body cam footage taken by one of the Hamas guys. And this big old lummox of a dog, German Shepherd, trots up the path in a kibbutz to him, to lick his hand or something. And he shoots it dead. It takes 3 shots, and it dies lying on the ground. That has profound impact. So we got through, I have to say, devious means, and not from the Israeli government or the IDF. We got the footage, and we have a rather brave editorial team who have now comprehended what we have. And you don't have to. We're not going to show young women who have been raped, but you can show one of their backs with blood down their pants, and you get it. And it only has to be a 12 frame or 24 frame, half a second or 1 second staccato cut, and you absolutely have the impact. So one of the techniques is you can't pull the punch. You have to kind of suck them in with a shared premise, and then there's like 50 things. I don't claim to be the expert, but these 2 psychologists, we have them in the editing room helping us to get it right. So that's peopleforpeace.net, PEOPLE 4 PEACE.net, peopleforpeace.net, and we'll take help wherever we can. And there you go.
Peter, I just came from the Nova exhibit, which was showing here in Toronto, and there was a lot of footage there. And the footage that they showed, so as it not to be too traumatic for most people, was exactly how you described it. If you want to see a great documentary, which again shows footage that's appropriate for most people, take a look at a film called The Killing Roads. It's by a documentarian here in Toronto, Yigal Hecht, The Killing Roads. It's outstanding, and it deals with the actual what happened on the highways leading to the Nova Festival and the ones near the kibbutzim. It's a very good documentary. David, Peter, I want to ask you in conclusion. I'm 65, so I'm getting up there. I think you're in your early 70s. Am I correct? Born in 1951, right? How do you feel about yourself?
Oh, how do I feel about myself? I'm never satisfied.
Yeah.
I toss and turn in my short nights. Most of my best ideas are when I'm half awake and half asleep. I'm always trying to do a little bit more. I'm always trying to work out how to lead from the middle. There's a thing called servant leadership, which is a management theory, and
Which
you
you write
lead.
about.
Yeah, you lead from the middle of your group. Um, and every so often I think, as with anti-Semitism, what was my conscious thought? I thought, I have to do something about this because this is dreadful. This is, in fact, an existential threat. We have to have a homeland. Why would we be a minority with no homeland? We've had a homeland there. How can these people say that Israel was stolen from the Palestinians in 1948? What about Abraham? Where did he live? Why is Judea called Judea, and Jesus and Mary, and pregnant Mary and husband Joseph with their donkey? Where did they go, and why did they go there? They went as Jews, and couldn't find place in a hostel, and they ended up in the barn, and that's where the baby Jesus was, in the manger, the feeding trough. Why were they there? Well, they walked on foot with their donkey from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And why did they go there? Because that was where the Romans were making them sign in for the census. As what race, religion, or nationality did they sign in? Jewish. So, there's a lot of nonsense being inflicted on us, where I think we have to shine the light of day. And we also need to try and create empathy. I think we're called as Jews to try to do better. Part of Tikkun Olam is not building walls of difference. It's building embraces, hugs of understanding and commonality. It's so easy at any time for people who are a bit scared of others. They look different. I had an interesting vacation a few years ago where we went to Perigord in France, and we went down into the prehistoric cave system. And it's shocking because it's a low ceiling, it's pitch dark, and you have a flashlight, and it's cold, and it's scary. And you think, God, to have lived in here in a little tribe, you'd be scared of your shadow. You'd be scared of everything. You're hungry. It's dark. You're worried the saber-toothed tiger's going to kill you. And also, you're very scared of those other people who look different and dress different over the other side of the valley. Along comes a leader, and the leader says, you don't have to be scared. I will tell you what the reality is. Everything that is a challenge to you is the fault of those people over there who are different than you. And by othering them, the leader aggrandizes themselves, and presto, you have an authoritarian system, and it feels better to hate people than it does to be scared of them. And so I think it's probably at this point carried in the DNA. Well, I think, being chosen, part of it is to try to build ecumenical bridges, and to not just preserve ourselves, but to preserve everyone, and to help people find the fact, which is a truth, that all the tribes on God's earth are united in the fact that they would actually like to have peace and quiet, and to have enough food on the table, and for their kids to get an education, and to have health care, and not to be in a war, and not to have conscription, and to have education, and so forth. We all want the same things. And we are being divided because we don't have enough critical thinking. So we need, as Jews, or just not necessarily as Jews, as leaders, as people who care about the world, we need to be building bridges, not walls.
Peter, you answered my question like a true Englishman. I asked you how you felt about yourself, and you touched on it. But I would tell you, from my perception, based on reading much of your book and this discussion that we're having today, and some articles that you sent me, You seem like a very satisfied man. Yes, you want to
Well,
bite off more.
I've definitely found in my own life how to be happy.
Yes.
Um, and I've tried to put that in the book. And it's multifaceted, and you can do certain things, and you will be happier. Also happiness comes in different time demarcations. Short-term happiness might be sitting in bed eating chocolate ice cream,
Yes.
but you will not make a happy life if all you do is sit in bed and eat chocolate ice cream. You have to explore the limits of your ambition. I say to the kids, think of your life as being in an envelope, and it's dark, and you have a pencil, and you can just choose to sit there and you'll never amount to anything, or you can poke away with the pencil. And sure, every so often, if you poke with the pencil in a certain direction, you will go through and pull the pencil back, and you'll say, whoa, I will never be a concert pianist. But then you have the opportunity to find a different direction and poke in that direction. And by doing that and not just sitting there, you will explore the limits of your ambition, your ability to achieve, and you will be much happier than if you just sit there cross-legged and do nothing in the middle of the
Right.
envelope.
And the beauty of your book is that you look at life, your life, and how other people can make their life better from what I think you call it a 35,000 feet up, which is a crane shot, as we call it in the business, the movie business. But you also you really go right down into the nuances. And one specific one, which I'd like to conclude with, is you talk in the book about apologizing. And you said like this. You said, think it through. By apologizing, you almost completely remove the other person's ability to blame you more. It's a very interesting approach. It's often a really smart move. In fact, if you apologize carefully, you can encourage the other person to help you on the path forward in ways that are personally useful to you, as well as strengthening the relationship. I thought that was great.
Took me something like 60 years to
Yes,
sort
of
that out
course.
myself.
Of
Uh,
course.
and actually writing the book has helped me to codify it in my own mind. But I think it's true. Apologize, do it properly, do it fulsomely. Don't say, well, but you see, I was,
Yeah.
don't do
Right.
all the excuse nonsense. Just apologize so fully that the person has to accept it. Also, if they don't accept the apology, that paints them into a place where you can cheerfully ignore them because they're a so and so. They didn't accept
Yeah.
a proper apology, so don't pay attention to them anymore. Most people accept an apology and become your
True.
ally,
That's very
and
true.
you can turn them. There's nothing the matter with self-interest, being a bit strategic in selflessness. There are advantages. You can find happy. You can find your wife in a non-profit.
Yeah, very good. Very good. In Judaism, we talk about forgiveness, and there's a prescription for it. And one of the things which is talked about by the sages is exactly what you're saying, is that if you approach someone three times and you say to them, listen, I'm truly apologetic for what I've done. And every single time they don't accept it, then it's time for you to say, you know what, it's not on me anymore, it's on you. Right?
Exactly right. There's also a whole other side to the apologizing thing, which is the Talmud tells us you don't just get to wipe the slate clean by apologizing.
Yeah.
Redemption comes from making good. And I have, when people have done me some terrible wrong, and I have a couple that I'm not going to mention that are in my mind, I said, okay, your apology is accepted. Know that it's accepted. Thank you for being brave enough to apologize. But by the way, I point out to you that it doesn't, what you've done, which was dreadful, doesn't get expunged. It's not wiped clean unless you do good deeds.
Mhm.
You have to sort of earn your way out of it.
Or earn your
And,
way back. Yes. Yes.
yeah, and I want you to know I'm watching, and I shall applaud you as I see you do it.
Mm.
And both of those people, well, actually, no, one of them never got that lesson. and is still a so-and-so. But the other one, I think, has done amazing healing of the world
That's great.
as a direct result of feeling dreadfully responsible and needing to kind of expiate that guilt. They took those lemons and made lemonade for other people.
Good for you. There's a pasuk, there's a line in the Torah that says if you're walking along the road, Peter, and you happen upon your enemy, and your enemy's donkey is lying by the side of the road, you have an obligation to go help pick up that donkey and load it up with stuff. And you know what the reason the sages give for that?
Why?
The reason is so that you can reconnect with that person, so that you can undermine the animosity between the two of you by a giving of yourself, by extending yourself. It's basically saying, look, I'm sorry for whatever occurred between us, and I'm here to help. And let's make this the starting point, which is a very beautiful point.
It is. It is. I hadn't heard that about the donkey.
Yes.
I shall now shamelessly make that part of the canon of my life lessons.
Yeah, please. So I like to conclude my interviews. I've been doing this for a few months now with a poem about my guests, in this case, Peter Samuelson, and it's composed or it's put together by AI. So the poem reads as follows. It's called An Ode to Peter Samuelson. In the tapestry of life, a thread so bright, Peter Samuelson shines with boundless light. A proud Jewish soul with heart sincere, he mends the world year by year. Producer, educated, storyteller, crafting dreams with a master hand. From Revenge of the Nerds to Wild's Grace, 25 films, each a vibrant space. I think it's 27. Entrepreneur with a pro-social creed, planting hope where there's dire need. Starlight Children's Foundation, his heart's own spark, grants dreams to children in illnesses dark. With Spielberg's hand, charities he's sown, 5 beacons of love, their kindness grown. Philanthropist, father, husband true, to Cyril his love's joy anew. Finding happy his guide to share, for young hearts seeking hope and care. Tikkun Olam has sacred call, scaling walls he rises, he never falls. Master storyteller with lessons to give, he sees every soul, helps them to live. Peter Samuelson, a name that sings of dream, of love, of world-mending things.
I'm overwhelmed. I have to say, in all these years of doing philanthropy, no one has ever, directly or through AI, written a poem. I think what I should do with that is stick it on the bathroom mirror, and at the top I should write, "So you'd better do this today, hadn't you?" And I shall read it while brushing my teeth.
I shall send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
I will. I will. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of our shows, I like to give over a bit of a synopsis, a very short one, as to what you can take out of this interview, because the goal, the objective of my podcast is to really pay homage to humankind, and doing that through inspirational interviews. And I think we have to pay homage to humankind because there's this big cloud over us nowadays, all over the world, sense of animosity, sense of fighting, a lack of unity. But when I interview Peter and people like Peter, his message, the core of his message, is to bring people together. It's to create community. It's to create unity. It's to make people feel not invisible. And I think that some of the best ways of doing that is through volunteerism. And Peter writes about it in his book, Finding Happy. And if you haven't sort of jumped into that world, do so, because it's fascinating and it's beautiful. And you find that you stop thinking so much about your own problems. And my father, God bless him, as I said, he was a rabbi. When people would come to him and they go, "Rabbi, you know what? I'm just so sad, just feeling so melancholy." My father would say, "We're going to find you a volunteer position. We're going to get you working on behalf of others." Right, Peter?
Well, your father was obviously, like mine, a great man.
Yes,
and
he was.
He made you who you are, and my dad made me who I am. And I think it's absolutely right. So it's if anyone is intrigued enough to want to have a look at the book, it's all the places you can get it in Kindle or the paperback or the audio are on www.samuelson.la. So go there. And as my son said, if you go buy it in Target rather than it'll be between the condoms and the plastic spoons.
Yes, if you're looking for plastic spoons, exactly. But I went on Amazon and I don't think it's available to June 10th. Is that correct?
June 10th. What they do is they ship them beforehand so that even at the book rate, it will reach you by June 10. Okay. And here we are. It's way less than a month. So I'm getting excited.
Oh, you should, man. You should. Peter Samuelson, as they say in Yiddish, yeshakoach on your work, your life to date. You're doing a magnificent job. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Kol Hakavod back at you. And whether the listener is Jewish or not Jewish, getting out of one's way and helping other people is kind of what we all should want on our tombstone, because that is how the ripples on the pond, the virtuous ripples on the pond, lift us up too.
Yeah, it's true. When you walk through a cemetery, and I enjoy doing that, and you look at these old tombstones, the ones that really grabbed me was, he was a good man, or she was a good woman. She was caring. She was loved for her kindness and generosity. You're absolutely right.
I just read the most fantastic thing on a tombstone. Spike Milliken was a famous British comic 50 years ago. On his tombstone, it says, "I told you I was ill."
Yeah, I know. I read that. I told you I wasn't feeling great. I love that. I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. If you'd like to be in touch, please do so. You can see at the bottom of the screen there how to do that. And I hope you take something really, really important out of this interview, because there is quite a bit to take out. Until we meet again, until we talk, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesund, go in good health. And I thank you so much for being part of this. Peter Samuelson, thank you again.
Thank you.